I think it's best for you to describe to our audience who Eric is and why we interviewed him.
Yeah. So Eric Lynxwiler is, as I say in the video, a Renaissance man of Los Angeles history and conservation. And he's written or edited books on neon in Los Angeles, on the history of Wilshire Boulevard that runs through Los Angeles, and is a historian of Knott's Berry Farm. Mm-hmm. He is also active in conservation of historic buildings and has been a tour guide, and I think was even my mentor over 20 years ago on giving tours in the Broadway theater district of downtown Los Angeles, which is where we met him.
Yep. Where did we meet him? We met him at some kind
Grand Central Market in Los Angeles.
I had a tasty burrito, which I regretted hours later.
Did you? I stuck with the donuts and coffee, and it was delightful.
Yeah, it doesn't affect your digestive system as much. And the main thing that we talked about, well, the main reason why we wanted to interview him is because we talked about kind of a lot of the different things that, like, what makes Tiki Bar, like, what kind of, it relates to Tiki Bars, and the fact that it's like back in the day before you had like chain restaurants and stuff like that. You're literally your building, your store, your restaurant had to advertise itself. So when someone was driving in their car, and you had to create some kind of a spectacle that people would see and be like, oh, what's that? That looks cool. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how like a tiki bar is like, hey, what's this giant bamboo A-frame looking building is? We talked to Eric about the different things that would attract people's attention to bring them inside. So we talk about what's the name of the type of architecture?
The programmatic and fantasy architecture.
We talk about neon.
Yep.
And how neon was at one time very, very, that would really draw attention.
Yeah, and that people don't think about it, but before Las Vegas and simultaneous with New York Times Square, LA and Hollywood in particular was huge on neon. And so Eric tells us a little about that.
It's a long conversation, but I will say this though. Stick around for the whole thing because it is so interesting and so informative. I'll be honest with you, I don't do a lot of talking in the video because I just let you two guys go. But, so.
Yeah, and we do some deep cuts into LA and LA history and architecture. In fact, Ray, I think you had to pull us out of the weeds once or twice, but we were having so much fun. But
I was just so entertained just listening to you guys talk. And I'm just like taking in all the information. And I really hope the audience out there, I hope you find this interview as interesting as I did.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
So here you go. Without further ado, here's our interview with Eric. What's his last name?
Lynxwiler. You want me to start us off? Or?
Yeah, you start off my show, Stephen.
All right, I get to start Ray's show for Ray.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this is Ray in LA Ray.
If I ever move here, that's going to be my name.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop the whole Tiki with Ray thing. I'm going to be called LA Ray.
You don't even have to change your look.
I don't even have to change my look. It's like, yeah, I'm already halfway there, right?
Join me.
Yeah, well, isn't that the interesting thing about Tiki is this is the birthplace of Tiki.
In my heart, yes. In my heart, yes.
And it is. I mean, like the original Don the Beachcomber.
Yeah.
Was, you showed me where the original...
Yeah, McAdam Place. We drove by there.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tiki did start here in Los Angeles.
Yep, and we still have it with, a dozen Tiki bars that have survived or have been brought back.
Yeah.
We can't get enough of Tiki Tea ever.
No. Twice. We were there.
Twice.
We were there last night and the night before that.
And Tonga Hut. Close to my heart.
Tonga Hut, I love Tonga Hut.
But in terms of themed bars, Los Angeles is full of themed spaces, and that even includes Idle Hour.
We went there.
Excellent.
Yep. So here's the question I have for you. Like, obviously the idea of a themed bar, a themed restaurant is kind of an older idea. But why is that? Why was that an idea? And then why has that kind of faded away? I have my ideas, but I want to know. I'm curious to see what you think.
I know that the idea of themed restaurants goes all the way back to, for example, France. When you were dining in Paris and you would enter, for example, hell.
Hell.
And there would be a hell restaurant where you actually were taken into hell by little devils, and they would pour you absinthe. So themed environments are not new, but Los Angeles just cherishes these things because we're a city of movies.
Yes.
The movies were born in Los Angeles. This is where we built, for example, I was mentioning the Turrets of Arabia.
Yeah.
United Artists would just build these enormous sets like Robin Hood's Castle, the turrets of this movie or that movie, and people would grow up with all of this fantasy right in their backyard, with movies literally being filmed, and the strangest sights of white elephants rising on turrets. I mean, we had this, and then we put it into our homes. So that Los Angeles, if you go to Washington, D.C., if you go to Philadelphia, the homes are very much standardized and alike. It has a feeling.
That's where I'm from.
In Los Angeles, the architecture is everywhere, meaning we have a French provincial next to an English revival, next to a Spanish Churrigueresque home.
Yeah.
And people each live in their own tiny little world, which they have themed to themselves.
Yeah.
So I feel like Los Angeles is a gigantic theme environment. Or a backlot.
So
Los Angeles is
I
a
think
giant
Los
backlot.
Angeles is being a new city, the first of the new cities in America.
Yeah.
Before the Phoenixes and
Yeah.
the Southwest, the other Southwest cities. It's a new city, a lot of land, real estate. Once the water came in,
Yeah.
movies, I think, were instrumental.
Yeah.
And brought a creative vibe, primarily, I guess, from the Midwest. We were talking about Disney in the Midwest.
Yeah.
That's why Disneyland, I think, has that Midwest mainstream sensibility, but at the same time, the whole movie environment.
Yeah.
Plus, and that brought a whole cast of characters.
I just love how you essentially already answered my question, like almost completely.
Show over.
Because
Now you know why.
You made up. You brought up a point that I never really thought about or put together. So say you have the film industry is here.
Yeah.
Movies are being made here. Sets are being made.
Yep.
So we're gonna, just like you were saying, it's gonna be a set. It's gonna be a forest. It's a set that's gonna be whatever.
Yeah.
And the idea is you want to make something that looks definitely realistic.
Yes.
So if you have all these people that's what they're used to doing and creating, when it comes to like, hey, let's open up a restaurant,
Yeah.
and they're going to do a theme,
Oh, yeah.
they're going to do it right because they don't know any
Yes.
other way to do it, right?
But also what we haven't mentioned is the automobile. So
Yeah.
Los Angeles grew up in the jazz age with movies and the automobile. So imagine, we just talked about Idle Hour. You're driving down the street, there's this gigantic 3-story tall barrel.
Yeah.
And what does it sell? Booze. So you're driving down the street and you see, for example, the Who's guy. And
Yeah.
it's this facade of a jail building with like cartoon people at the bars. And you go inside and they sell fried chicken and they serve it to you in jail cells. And that existed on Sunset Boulevard.
That was
It's
the El
automobile.
Cid
Yeah,
location.
it's now
Yeah.
El Cid. You know it.
Yeah.
These locations were meant to
How
give
did
you
they sell that idea?
a strange theme, and as you drove past in your car, you went, wait, what's this iceberg? Or
Yeah.
what's this Pueblo?
Yeah.
And that made you stop, slow down, pull over, and eat their fried chicken, or want to experience this escapist moment.
An idea that I came up with, and we were talking.
Yeah.
The reason why I think the idea of a themed building restaurant has kind of gone away is we're living in a world of chain restaurants and
Yeah.
stores. And fast forward to now, let's go back to like when I was a teenager, so like the 80s. By the time I was a teenager, we all know what McDonald's is.
Yeah.
We all know what Taco Bell is. We know what Kentucky Fried Chicken is. You know what it is, but before chain restaurants, here's this random restaurant.
Yep, mom and pop.
And how are you going to know? How is the random person going to know? Well, what is that? What do they sell there? Just like you said, Giant Barrel. Well, I guess that's booze.
Let me, if I can, take the discussion back to something, Ray, you said about the movies, the architecture, the themes.
Yeah.
You know, that, I've been playing with the idea that I don't know if Disneyland would have been invented without Southern California.
Or Knott's Berry Farm.
Than Knott's Berry Farm. And trying to segue into Knott's Berry Farm, and hopefully I won't throw you a curveball here, but and to what you said, Ray, the movie set, the movie design set, the controlled atmospheric environment into architecture and theme restaurants, into theme parks. And so one of my favorite characters is Harry Oliver.
Oh, I love Harry Oliver.
And because he ties all these themes together for me.
You are so right. All of the restaurants that he created, the themed environments, the Tam O'Shanter.
He was a set designer. He was an art director for movies in the silent film era up until 1941, I think was his last movie. And he was a great character, a friend of Walt Disney's. And he created movie sets, and he created what they said controlled environments and atmospheric settings.
Yes.
Which is what our whole thing is about this discussion and about tiki bars.
I'll say that what he designed on film for movies such as The Silent Ben-Hur, his sets had a weight and an age. And I think that's very important because previously silent movies were doing here's a wall, and that was how you filmed. But his sets had giant beams and the ceilings were sagging and the walls were weighted and textured. He gave the environments a feeling of being old and lived in.
Yep.
And that was something that he brought to his architecture when he was hired by, say, Van de Kamp's to create the Van de Kamp's windmill bakeries. So literally, there are pieces of Los Angeles that were built by movie studios or used as sets and then became historical landmarks that people still live in today. What I will tell you, and this is very, very meta, as far as I understand, there's a series of little tiny row houses, bungalows, that are over by Los Feliz, and they're all like Snow White looking bungalows. And supposedly, these cute little bungalows with their sloping storybook style architecture roots were an inspiration for Snow White. We have all of these theme parks, but we need to get to where we are now. I'm deriving your conversation.
No, go for it. This is what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're sitting in a very historic area of downtown Los Angeles, and to be honest,
what is this
lot of
called?
people.
What is this?
Well, this is Grand Central Market.
Grand Central Market. Okay.
Grand Central Market. And Grand Central Market has been here since 1917. Okay. This building was a fashion, a department store. Before it became this. So there's still architectural details in here from when it was a department store.
Okay.
But in 1917 it became a market, and it has risen and fallen with the tide of Los Angeles. But what it is surrounded by are the historic theaters of Los Angeles. This neighborhood is filled with themed environments, but it's all a ticketed themed environment. Yeah. There are very few interiors here that you can get into for free, because you are escaping with the price of, say, a movie ticket.
Yeah. So where we're located is fascinating to me because, Eric, you may not remember this, but I think in the year 2000, you were my trainer to become a docent on the Broadway Theater.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I didn't know
So how long
that.
have you been doing this? How long have you been giving guides of downtown LA?
Oh, that's a zinger, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been giving tours of downtown LA for about 23 years for the Los Angeles
So you started, what, when you were 5 years old?
Yeah, exactly.
You do not age a bit.
You are flattering me, thank you. I started coming to downtown Los Angeles when I got my first automobile. Basically, It was my escape. It was like I grew up in the suburbs. I was sick of the suburbs and Safeway and Zodi's and the White Tower. I'm like, I'm done. And I got in the automobile and I thought, well, I have my paper map. If I go from here to here, I can cut corners on the trafficy freeways. And that corner was Broadway. I got off on Broadway to get from A to B, and as I was driving, I went, what is this wonderland of neon marquees and terracotta and movie theaters and so many people in stores? I pulled over, threw money in the meter, grabbed my camera, and I started photographing right then and there this neighborhood of Broadway that I had never seen before. And I haven't left. My life just kept getting more and more urban.
Yeah.
I now live in downtown Los Angeles, and my heart is all over this
Amazing.
place. Downtown Los Angeles isn't just one downtown. We have multiple little pockets of downtowns. And thankfully, when they clear-cut Bunker Hill to give us a brand new skyscraper downtown, all of this vintage, early 20th century downtown was preserved by accident.
Yeah.
They just focused their attention over there and let this downtown rot away. And in the lack of demolition, there was preservation. And we still have a very, very intact historic core. But this isn't the only downtown. We also have Olvera Street. It's a 1920s Ramona-esque village, but a lot of people go, oh, well, this is old Mexico. But it's not. It's actually just yet another dirty, dusty alley on the backside of downtown, but there was one preservationist in the 1920s who was pushing to save those old historic buildings. And she, almost single-handedly, was able to develop what we now know as Olvera Street by turning it into a Ramona-esque Mexican romanticized village. It was a themed environment in a Mexican style.
One of the first themed groupings, would you say, in LA or Southern California? Or
I would say it was a themed, an outdoor themed shopping village.
Okay.
And it was very much like a backlot, and yet it utilized the existing historic buildings from the turn of that last century.
Yeah.
The adobe structures are still there, so they were celebrating real history with real buildings, but they put a veneer of a romantic Mexican village on top of it.
Yeah, but coming back to the Grand Central Market, how did this survive?
Grand Central Market became a destination for all the office workers who were in the area. So all the folks that were working up on Bunker Hill could take the funicular Railway Angels flight when it was back in operation, and they could work up the hill, then take the railway down for a quarter, and then have lunch here. This place didn't stay open for dinner until just a few years ago. It was breakfast, lunch, and then they would close. Los Angeles now has a very big residential environment because all of these historic core buildings are being converted from empty commercial into residential loft housing. So downtown LA is booming with all of these people who are living here, walking their dogs late at night, doing their shopping and eating all around their own loft housing here in downtown. It is important to recognize that Los Angeles was born and grew in a time of movies, automobile, and neon was there too. So this is all early 20th century, 1920s, 1930s. Los Angeles is growing, booming, expanding, more people are piling in.
Yeah.
And as mom and pop businesses were growing, they needed to identify themselves on crowded streets.
Yeah.
And they did that by putting a neon sign on their business. And that neon sign could have been on the roof.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be enough. They had to put one in the window and over the door and on a pole out in front, and then put an arrow pointing the way that flashed. It was a cacophony of neon lights. And the Broadway district was part and parcel to that. All of these theaters grew up, and we had giant vertical signs and marquees and illuminated facades. And the marquees even had to change with time as we realized how to utilize neon even better. They went from being box marquees that focused on the pedestrian and turned into, thanks to S. Charles Lee, a window box marquee that actually aimed towards the drivers in the street to promote to the cars. So as neon filled our lives, the architecture adapted to put more neon on it.
Yeah. So Eric is too modest. He is the Renaissance man in Los Angeles, not only of neon, but of all things historic and architectural. But
no, he was going to say that, but you were going to.
Yeah. But do you still do the neon bus tour?
Oh my gosh, yes. No, a neon cruise is a convertible double-decker bus. We only fill the top deck, and you're on eye level with all of these movie marquees. So you're cruising Los Angeles, and you're seeing it at the tree line, looking down, and it's a different perspective, really.
I do want to bring things to a home.
Sure.
Into the future. Well, to the present. Well, what happened? Why did we lose the neon? Why did we lose the themed restaurants and bars? Why did that all go away?
I can tell you when it comes to neon, when I said that every mom and pop business had to have not one but 12 signs, it was this enormous cacophony of visual overload. And then you put a billboard on top of it, and everybody is fighting. In those 20s and 30s, there were no rules for signage. If you wanted to put a blade sign on your building, you put a blade sign on the building.
Yeah.
But in the 50s and 60s, that was an old technology. That 1920s thing that was so modern and new suddenly became noirish and dark in the 50s. It was an old technology, your grandparents' technology. In the 50s, we were looking towards something else called backlit plastic. that didn't take talent to make. Every neon sign you've ever seen was made by human hands. As I say, you don't even need opposable thumbs to make a plastic sign. It was incredibly cheap. So there was a motion in the 50s and 60s to clean up the streets and remove all of those old, decrepit signs. And people actually volunteer. Sorry, sign companies volunteer.
So was that
you
sort
want
of
your sign gun, we'll take it off.
The whole urban renovation, like the tearing down of Bunker Hill?
That's
Yeah,
it.
and you're
That's
right.
it.
Yeah, I mean, like you get to a point now, everyone has a neon sign,
And
then 10
yeah.
years later, going into like the 60s, the technology's changed. Where like, oh, that's old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Neon wasn't modern anymore. Plastic was, and therefore, to remain modern, you needed to have the latest technology. That neon just went by the wayside, and sign companies were very happy to help you get rid of your old sign so they could sell you a new one.
One thing I noticed when you did the Esoteric tour company, which you can go online, tours about Los Angeles. Eric was recently one of the guests on a neon, was, and I never thought about this, how fragile neon is, but how durable it is. So LED has taken over, and LED, especially interiors, is a great tool. But LEDs don't last forever. They get wonky, but a properly placed neon sign can last
Forever.
Yeah.
We have tubes in the museum's collection that date to the 1800s because when it comes to neon, you're talking about an incredibly base technology. It is so old school, meaning it is just gas, glass, and electricity, and that's it. Gas, glass, electricity. The technology that was used to make neon tubes in the 1920s is the exact same technology today.
Yeah.
And as long as that glass tube remains sealed and safe, that tube can honestly last forever. We don't even know how long it can go because our 100-year tubes are still going strong.
Do you think there will ever be a revival in themed places?
I want to say yes, and yet things like Kowloon in Boston and things like the Maikai and these enormous tiki spaces are so hard to maintain and very expensive. I think that the bigger spaces are what's going to get us out of our home environment.
Yep.
And I will fly to Boston just to go see this enormous tiki bar and throw money at them too. I will open up my pocketbook for any of these great environments because I never want to see these places go away, ever.
No.
I've lost too many in my lifetime, the hookah being one of them. I think that these enormous spaces that we have right now, we really need to cherish and hold on to as tightly as possible. That includes the historic theaters on Broadway, which are 1920s escapist fantasies, and that also includes the 1950s massive tiki bars with stage shows. We have to hold on to what we have. Will we see new construction? Yeah, we will at a small scale. But I don't think we're going to see those grand environments anymore.
So optimistic, pessimistic, or glass half full?
Glass half full. Hold on to what we have.
Eric, thank you for being on the show.
Awesome discussion. Thanks
Do you
for
have
coming out.
any links, anything you want to, like anything you want to...
Join me on a neon cruise with the Museum of Neon Art. The website is neonmona.org.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That was awesome.
Did they just give us beer? Somebody just gave us booze. Thank you.
These intros and outro videos is we're filming these weeks after the actual trip happened, but we're pretending that this is going on before we actually do the interviews.
A little Doctor Who time travel here.
Yeah.
Yeah.